Hello. Welcome to Day by Day True Crime Stories, the podcast where we explore a different crime or justice milestone from this day in history. I'm your host, Kona Gallagher, and today is March 21st. On this day in 1975, the brutal murder of Father Anthony Crean shocked the quiet village of Shorn Kent. It wasn't just the violence of the crime that disturbed the community, it was the revelation of who was responsible. His killer, Patrick MacKay, wasn't just a troubled young man with a violent streak. He would soon be unmasked as a prolific serial killer. Today, we're going to explore the events leading up to Father Crean's death and how this case led to stopping a serial killer who had been operating in the shadows for years. Let's get started. Father Anthony Crean was the kind of man you'd want in your corner. At 63 years old, he was a deeply beloved and respected man in the village of Shorn Kent. A devoted Roman Catholic priest, he was known for his kindness, generosity, and unwavering faith. He had dedicated his life to serving his parishioners and was always ready to lend a helping hand or a word of comfort. But sometimes, kindness can put people in danger, especially when it's extended to somebody as deeply disturbed as Patrick MacKay. Born on September 25, 1952 in Middlesex, England, Patrick MacKay had a violent, unstable childhood. His father was an alcoholic with a vicious temper, and that environment left a mark on young Patrick. He started acting out early, exhibiting cruelty to animals, setting fires, and committing theft, behaviors that would only grow worse over time. By the time he was 15 years old, doctors had diagnosed him as being a psychopath. Over the next several years, he was removed from his family and put into a variety of schools, institutions, and prisons, but nothing seemed to help. In 1968, he was committed to Moss Side Hospital in Liverpool, where he remained until his release in 1972. When MacKay moved to Shorn, Kent in the early 1970s, Father Crean didn't see a violent psychopath. He saw a young man in need of help. He offered Patrick guidance, support, and even shelter. It was the kind of compassion that he had shown to many others before. At first, MacKay accepted the priest's kindness, but trust in this case would be misplaced. In 1973, MacKay betrayed Father Crean's goodwill in a way that seemed petty at the time, but would later be seen as a serious red flag. He stole a blank check from the priest's home, forged his signature, and cashed it for £30. It wasn't a fortune, but it was a violation of trust. When he was caught, he was ordered to repay the money, but Patrick never did. And even though MacKay moved away to London, his resentment toward Father Crean never faded. Instead, it grew into a deadly fixation. During his time in London, MacKay's mental state worsened. He became obsessed with Nazism, abused drugs and alcohol, and became even more violent. Then, in 1975, he returned to Shorn and to Father Crean. On March 21st, 1975, MacKay decided to act on his hatred. He broke into Father Crean's isolated cottage while the priest was away. When Father Crean returned home, MacKay attacked without mercy. It started with his fists. He pummeled the elderly priest, overpowering him before escalating the brutality even further. MacKay grabbed an axe and struck repeatedly in a display of pure rage and psychopathy. When investigators arrived later that day, what they found was beyond words. The bloodied crime scene told the story of an attack that was both personal and sadistically violent. It didn't take police long to zero in on a suspect. MacKay was already known to authorities, and several witnesses had placed him near the scene that day. Given his history with Father Crean, he quickly became a prime suspect, and within 48 hours, police had him in custody. Once in custody, MacKay wasted no time confessing. But what he told police went far beyond the murder of Father Crean. he calmly admitted that the priest wasn't the first person he had killed. While he ended up admitting to 4 murders in total, information from prisoners linked him to an additional 6. The 4 murders that MacKay confessed to were Father Anthony Crean, Isabella Griffiths, 87, who had been found strangled in her home in London, Adele Price, 89, another elderly woman murdered in her home, and an unidentified homeless man who MacKay said he had thrown off a bridge in 1974. The pattern was clear. MacKay attacked the vulnerable, choosing people who couldn't fight back. By November 1975, Patrick MacKay stood trial for multiple murders. His defense team argued that his mental illness made him incapable of premeditated murder, leading to a plea of manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility. Psychiatrists confirmed that MacKay was suffering from psychopathy and schizophrenia, but the prosecution pointed out that his crimes were calculated and planned. In the end, MacKay was convicted of 3 murders and sentenced to life in prison. Since 1995, MacKay has repeatedly become eligible for parole. Each time, the public outcry has been fierce, and parole boards have consistently ruled that he remains too dangerous to be released. He is now one of Britain's longest-serving prisoners, having spent nearly 50 years behind bars, though he now resides in an open prison with day release privileges. His last denied parole was in 2023, when it was found that he had been using drugs. He is eligible for parole once again this year in 2025. Father Anthony Crean's murder left deep scars on the community of Shorn Kent. A man who had dedicated his life to helping others was brutally betrayed by someone he had tried to save. His death and the subsequent arrest of his killer, however, likely saved countless lives and took a dangerous predator off the streets. Thank you for joining me on today's episode of Day by Day True Crime Stories. If you found this story compelling, please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. And be sure to join me again tomorrow as we explore another significant event in true crime history. Until then, stay safe and remember that behind every headline is a life worth remembering. Day by Day True Crime Stories is a Little Monster production.
Hey, you can do it!